John had spent most of his life chasing the unknown. He had traveled through asteroid fields, navigated derelict space stations, and faced dangers most humans could not imagine. He had survived radiation storms, alien predators, and treacherous planets. So, when the Galactic Guild announced a reward for the one who retrieved the lost relic of Zariah 9, John assumed it would be something simple, a rare artifact, advanced technology, or a generous amount of credits. He never imagined it would be. The grand hall of the Guild was vast, stretching hundreds of meters with floating platforms and shining lights. John had been here before, but today the hall felt different. There was excitement, tension, and a strange energy he could not name. Explorers from across the galaxy were gathered, but all eyes soon turned to a figure emerging from the shadows. She appeared slowly, as if the world itself hesitated for her arrival. Her skin was pale, almost glowing under the hall lights. Her hair flowed like liquid night, and her eyes were silver, reflecting light in ways John had never seen before. She moved gracefully, every step deliberate, and yet there was a wildness in her presence, a quiet power that made the air around her feel alive. The guildmaster stepped forward, smiling. "This," he said, his voice echoing in the hall, "is your reward." John froze. His mind raced. He had expected a shiny box, a key to some treasure, maybe a new ship module. Not this. Not an alien vampire woman standing before him with eyes that seemed to look straight into his soul. I don't understand," John stammered, stepping closer. The guildmaster chuckled softly. "You wanted a reward? Here she is. She is bound to you, not by chains, but by choice. Eventually, she will follow only if you earn her trust. She is not a toy, not a servant. She is alive, and she is free." The woman, Lyra, as the guildmaster called her, tilted her head slightly, studying John with her piercing silver eyes. There was curiosity there, but also caution, like a predator watching prey, though John quickly realized she was no ordinary predator. Her gaze was intense, intelligent, and strangely gentle at the same time. John's heart pounded. He had faced death countless times, yet he felt fear now, the kind that gnawed at your chest and made your hands shake. He had never felt anything like this. Lyra spoke then, her voice soft but clear, musical yet chilling. "I am Lyra, I belong to no one. Yet I am bound to the one who frees me. Tell me, human, who are you?" John swallowed hard. I'm John, I recovered the relic." He felt ridiculous. It sounded so small compared to the presence before him. She didn't answer immediately, only studied him, her silver eyes scanning him in a way that made him feel exposed, as if she could see every fear, every hope, every secret he had buried in his heart. He realized something in that moment. This was no ordinary reward. This was not a gift you could put on a shelf or sell for credits. This was something extraordinary, something alive, something dangerous, beautiful, and mysterious. The guildmaster stepped back. "She is yours, John. Take her, learn her, earn her trust. Many have tried, but few succeed. She is a test, a companion, a challenge, and perhaps something more. Use her wisely, for she is unlike anything you have ever known." John nodded, but his mind was a storm. What did this mean? How was he supposed to handle a being like this? He had spent his life preparing for the dangers of the galaxy, for monsters, for traps, for betrayal, but he had never prepared for this. Never prepared to be given a living, thinking, feeling creature as a reward. Lyra moved closer, and John felt the air shift. Her presence was intoxicating, almost magnetic. He could feel his pulse quicken, his instincts scream. And yet there was something comforting about her calm, controlled movements, and in that instant, John realized the truth. His reward was not an object. It was not something simple. It was a being who would challenge him, change him, and perhaps make him feel more alive than he had ever felt before. The hall fell silent, and for the first time in his life, John felt the weight of responsibility in a way he never had. This was not a mission. This was not an adventure. This was something entirely different. Something that could change him forever. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Then, I accept." Lyra's silver eyes met his, and a faint, knowing smile touched her lips. The journey had just begun. The first days with Lyra were strange. John had expected a reward to be simple, something he could use or admire. But Lyra was alive, aware, and uncomfortably intelligent. She observed him constantly, her silver eyes following his every movement. Sometimes it felt like she could see straight into his thoughts, reading the fears and doubts he tried to hide even from himself. John quickly realized that earning her trust would not be easy. She spoke little, only observing, testing him in ways he could not always understand. She could move with uncanny speed, vanish into shadows, and strike with precision that made his head spin. But despite her strength, John sensed something more delicate beneath her formidable exterior, a part of her that longed for connection, for understanding, and perhaps even for trust. He tried to reach her slowly, cautiously. He shared stories of his adventures, of the places he had seen and the dangers he had faced. At first she listened silently, her expression unreadable. But occasionally, when he spoke of a narrow escape or a lonely night on a barren planet, he saw something flicker in her eyes, interest, perhaps even empathy. John found himself talking more than he ever had. He spoke of his family back on Earth, his friends he had lost along the way, and the weight of always being alone in a galaxy that never seemed to care. He told her things he had never told another soul, and slowly Lyra began to respond, not with words but with gestures. A tilt of her head when she agreed, a faint smile when she appreciated something, or a hand brushing his by accident, sending a shiver through him. One evening, as they traveled through a quiet sector of the galaxy, John watched her sitting by the viewport, her long hair catching the faint glow of distant stars. "Lyra," he said softly, unsure if she would answer. Do you like being free?" She turned her head slowly, her silver eyes catching the starlight. "Freedom is not simple," she said, her voice low and musical. "It is a gift and a responsibility. Many fear it. Many reject it. Few know what to do with it." John nodded, understanding more than he expected. "I've spent my life running toward danger. I thought I was free, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was just surviving." Lyra's gaze softened. "Survival is only one part of life. Living, truly living, is harder." Her words struck him. He realized that the Galactic Guild had not given him a mere reward. They had given him someone who could challenge him in ways no mission or artifact ever could. Someone who would not just follow but question, test, and demand the best from him. In the following days, John began teaching Lyra things about humans. Simple things at first, like emotions, humor, and curiosity. She learned quickly, though sometimes she seemed amused by human weaknesses. When he laughed, she tilted her head, a small smile forming. When he grew frustrated, she watched silently, but John swore he saw understanding in her eyes. Yet not all was easy. Lyra was still cautious, still wary of him. At times, she disappeared for hours, leaving John alone with his thoughts and doubts. He wondered if she would ever truly trust him, or if she would vanish as suddenly as she had appeared. The uncertainty gnawed at him, making him question if he was worthy of her presence. One night, after a long day of travel, John finally found her sitting on the edge of the ship's observation deck. "I'm trying," he admitted, his voice low. "I don't know if I'm doing this right. If I can earn your trust." Lyra's silver eyes met his, and she spoke softly, almost a whisper. "Trust is not given lightly, John. It is not a reward. It is earned through patience, courage, and understanding. If you truly wish to have it, you must prove yourself, not to me, but to yourself as well." John felt something shift inside him. For the first time in years, he realized that being human, his flaws, his courage, his mistakes, could mean something extraordinary. It wasn't about being the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest. It was about persistence, heart, and connection. As he looked at Lyra under the soft glow of the stars, he felt a spark of hope and fear. He knew this journey would not be easy, but he also understood that it could be the most important journey of his life. And in that quiet moment, as the stars shone above them, John made a silent promise. He would not fail her, not her, not the reward he had never expected. John and Lyra had been traveling together for weeks now, slowly learning each other's ways. He had grown used to her quiet presence, her sharp reflexes, and the way her silver eyes seemed to read him better than he read himself. Yet the universe was never kind to those who grew comfortable. Danger had a way of finding those who least expected it. It started with small things. An alarm that blared in the middle of the night, a ship detection ping that shouldn't have existed, a faint hum outside their cabin that made Lyra tense. John noticed how her body shifted, how her instincts went on high alert, and he realized she could sense threats he could not. It was unnerving and humbling. He had faced countless dangers alone, but nothing had ever made him feel so vulnerable and unprepared. Then the attack came. It was sudden and brutal. A rival faction, known for capturing unique beings from the Outer Rim, had tracked them down. Their ships ambushed John's vessel in a dead sector of space, cutting off any hope of escape. Alarms screamed, and the ship shook violently as laser fire pierced the hull. John fought to maintain control, but he quickly realized that his human reflexes were not enough against this new, calculated threat. Lyra moved like a shadow, faster than the eye could follow. She struck with precision, disabling enemy drones and defending John at every turn. Her strength was terrifying, her agility unmatched. Yet even with her abilities, John saw her flinch as a laser grazed her arm. A hiss of pain escaped her lips, sharp and human, and for a moment John's heart stopped. He had faced death countless times, but the thought of losing her, of seeing her harmed, cut deeper than any wound he had ever endured. "John," she shouted, her voice urgent. "Stay close." He obeyed instinctively, moving with a combination of fear and trust. Together they navigated the chaos, each covering the other, each anticipating the other's movements. And yet, as they fought, John realized something important. Lyra's loyalty wasn't given lightly. She didn't just follow because of the guild's binding. She stayed because she had chosen to trust him, even in the face of overwhelming danger. Hours, or maybe minutes, it was hard to tell, passed in a blur of fire and movement. They barely survived, but they did. The rival ships retreated, leaving John's vessel battered and smoking. John leaned against the control panel, chest heaving, adrenaline coursing through him. He looked at Lyra, expecting exhaustion, maybe even anger. But instead he saw a calm intensity, her silver eyes still sharp and alert. You saved us," John said, his voice trembling. "I thought I could handle this alone, but I couldn't have done it without you." Lyra's gaze softened for a brief moment. "Nor could I," she admitted quietly. "Strength alone is not enough. You must have courage, heart, and trust." John felt a mix of pride and fear. He realized that the reward he had been given was not a gift to possess. It was a living being who challenged him, protected him, and demanded the best of him in every moment. And the thought of failing her even once was unbearable. That night, as they patched up the ship and shared a quiet meal, John couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. He realized that his feelings for Lyra had deepened beyond curiosity or obligation. She had become essential, not just to his survival but to his life in every sense. The connection they shared, forged through trust, danger, and shared experiences, had changed him. Lyra sat across from him, silent, but attentive. Finally she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "You are human," she said. "Fragile, limited, but you are also courageous and relentless. That is why I follow you. Not because I must, but because I choose to." John swallowed hard. Her words struck him deeper than any weapon ever could. He realized then that the journey ahead would not just be about survival or adventure. It would be about understanding, trust, and the bond they were forming. One that could withstand the fiercest storms the galaxy could throw at them. And as he looked at her, standing tall and beautiful amidst the wreckage, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, he would face it with her. Because for the first time in his life, he understood that the greatest reward he had ever received was not an object, not wealth, not power. It was her. The days after the attack were tense. John tried to rest, to recover from the adrenaline and fear, but sleep did not come easily. His mind replayed the chaos, the flash of laser light and Lyra moving like a shadow, saving him again and again. He realized he had taken her strength for granted, thinking he could protect her. But now he understood. Lyra's power was unmatched, yet she was still vulnerable. And that vulnerability made her real, alive, and profoundly important to him. Lyra sensed John's unease. She moved silently around the ship, her presence comforting yet commanding. One evening, John found her sitting near the observation deck, staring at a distant cluster of stars. "You're worried," she said softly. Her voice was calm, soothing, yet there was an edge of something ancient, something beyond human understanding. John hesitated, then nodded. "I am. I keep thinking about what could happen, about losing you, about failing you. I've faced danger before, but this feels different." Lyra turned her silver eyes toward him. "It is different. You are learning that some things cannot be fought with weapons alone. Trust, understanding, and courage, these are the tools you need now. John swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, to tell her that he would do anything to protect her, but words felt inadequate. Instead, he simply nodded, letting her presence speak to him. He realized that trust was not something she would give easily. It had to be earned moment by moment through patience and courage. Over the next few days, John tried to show Lyra that he was worthy of her trust. He repaired the ship's damaged systems with meticulous care, anticipating dangers they might face next. He shared more about himself, not just his adventures, but his fears, his regrets, and the moments in life when he had felt alone and powerless. Lyra listened. She asked few questions, but John noticed the subtle shifts in her expressions, the slightest tilt of her head, a small smile, or a hand brushing his in a fleeting gesture. Each moment felt like a breakthrough, a tiny step toward mutual understanding. Yet despite the progress, there was still tension. Lyra's instincts never wavered. She disappeared for hours, exploring, hunting, or simply moving through the shadows. John could not follow her, could not reach her during those moments, and it left him feeling restless and uncertain. He worried that he was not enough, that he could never truly match her depth and power. One night, as the ship drifted near a dying star, John found Lyra perched on the edge of the hull, looking out at the swirling gases and molten light. "Why do you trust me at all?" he asked quietly, almost to himself. Lyra's gaze held his, intense and unwavering. "I do not trust blindly," she said. "But I have seen your courage, your heart. You are human, fragile, and flawed. But that is also what makes you extraordinary. I watch, I wait, I test. But I follow because I choose to, not because I am bound." John felt his chest tighten. Her words were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They reminded him that this bond was fragile, that one mistake could destroy it, but they also reminded him that he had the chance to earn something greater than anything he had ever imagined. For the first time, John realized the true weight of the reward he had received. It was not simply an exotic companion, a tool or a prize. It was a living being who challenged him, demanded his best, and offered him the chance to grow in ways he had never imagined. It was trust, fragile and precious, and it had to be nurtured carefully, like a flame in the darkness. As he watched Lyra disappear into the shadows of the ship's hull to patrol the perimeter, John made a silent vow to himself. No matter what dangers they faced, no matter how difficult the path ahead, he would prove himself worthy of her trust, not for glory, not for reward, but because she had become something essential in his life, something he could not imagine losing. And in that quiet moment, John understood something he had never realized before. Being human did not mean weakness. Being human meant courage, heart, and the ability to connect with another being on a level that transcended strength, power, and skill. With Lyra, he had the chance to discover the full extent of what it truly meant to live. The calm days did not last long. The galaxy was unforgiving, and John soon realized that their bond would be tested in ways he could not have imagined. Word of Lyra's existence had spread faster than they anticipated. A ruthless faction hungry for power and control had begun hunting them relentlessly. Their goal was simple: capture Lyra and use her abilities for their own gain. John felt the weight of responsibility like never before. He had faced danger alone countless times, but now, with Lyra at his side, he understood that survival was no longer enough. He had to protect her, not just with weapons or strategy, but with every part of his being. His courage, his heart, and even his fear became tools to ensure she remained free. The attack came suddenly. A group of heavily armed ships appeared on the horizon, cutting off their escape route. John's hands trembled as he activated the ship's defenses, but he knew instinctively that they could not rely on technology alone. This was a battle of skill, instinct, and trust. Lyra moved with unparalleled speed, her body a blur as she defended the ship and John at every turn. Her silver eyes glowed with intensity, her movements precise and deadly. John watched in awe, but also in fear. Each time a blast struck near her, he felt a pang of terror unlike anything he had ever experienced. Losing her was unthinkable. She was no longer a reward, no longer a prize. She had become a part of his life, something essential, something he could not imagine being without. As the battle raged on, John realized the truth. Their survival depended not only on Lyra's strength but also on their trust in each other. He shouted commands, anticipating her movements, matching her instincts with his own human intuition. Together they moved as one, human and alien, heart and instinct intertwined, but the enemies were relentless. One of their ships fired a concentrated beam that struck the hull, sending a shockwave through the vessel. John was thrown across the room, hitting the metal wall hard. Pain surged through him, but his thoughts were only of Lyra. He saw her fighting desperately, cornered by a group of enemy drones. Without hesitation, he pushed himself up and ran toward her, dodging sparks and debris. "Lyra!" he yelled, his voice raw with fear and determination. Her eyes met his, and in that moment no words were needed. She understood his intent, and together they fought back. Every strike synchronized, every move instinctive. The danger was overwhelming, yet John felt a strange clarity. He was human, fragile, limited, and yet capable of extraordinary things when it mattered most. The battle ended in a blur of fire and smoke. The enemy ships retreated, defeated for now, leaving John and Lyra standing among the wreckage. John sank to his knees, exhausted, and Lyra moved to his side. Her hand brushed his shoulder gently, a gesture that conveyed more than words ever could. "You risked yourself for me," she said softly, her silver eyes searching his. "You could have escaped, but you stayed." John swallowed hard, his chest heaving. "I couldn't leave you, not you. You're more than a reward, Lyra. You're part of my life now." For the first time, Lyra smiled fully, her expression softening in a way John had never seen. "And you are mine, not because of the guild, not because of binding, but because you earned me. You faced fear, danger, and choice, and you chose courage." John felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of relief, pride, and overwhelming emotion. He realized then that the journey they had begun was not just about survival. It was about connection, trust, and the courage to face the impossible together. As they sat amid the wreckage, John understood something profound. Humanity was more than just survival, more than just strength. It was the heart that could fight, the courage that could endure, and the ability to love and protect another being no matter the cost. And for the first time in his life, John knew he had received a reward far greater than anything he could have imagined. Lyra rested her head near his shoulder, and for the first time John felt truly complete. Together they had survived, and together they would face whatever the galaxy had in store next. After the battle, silence settled over John and Lyra's ship. The galaxy beyond their viewport was vast, quiet, almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just endured. Yet John's mind was anything but calm. He knew the threat was not over. The rival faction would return, stronger and more determined. Every time he looked at Lyra, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. She was no ordinary companion. She was alive, aware, and entirely irreplaceable. Lyra seemed to sense his thoughts. She moved beside him, her presence calm yet intense. "You worry too much," she said softly, though there was no judgment in her tone. "You fear losing what you care for. It is human." John nodded slowly, staring out at the distant stars. "I do fear it," he admitted. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to protect you. To protect us." Lyra's silver eyes met his, and for a moment he felt stripped bare. "Strength alone does not protect," she said. "Courage does. Heart does. And trust in yourself and in me." Her words struck him deeply. He realized then that their bond was no longer simple companionship. It was a connection forged in life and death, in fear and courage, in trust and choice. Lyra had chosen him, and now he had to choose for her as well. Not as a master, not as a protector, but as someone who truly understood the value of what they shared. The next days were a test of endurance and patience. John and Lyra traveled to a remote system, hoping to repair the damage to their ship and gather resources. Every move they made was cautious, every decision weighed carefully. John found himself thinking constantly about Lyra, not just about how to keep her safe, but about what she meant to him. One evening, while they rested in the observation deck, John spoke quietly. "Lyra, do you ever regret trusting me?" She paused, her gaze focused on the swirling galaxies beyond. "Regret is human," she said softly. "I have no choice but to experience what comes. But you have earned more than most. You face fear, you show courage, and you care. That is rare." John felt a lump in his throat. I don't want to fail you. Not now, not ever." Lyra stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. The contact was electric, gentle yet grounding. You will not fail, John, not if you remember who you are. Trust yourself, as I trust you. That is all that matters. The next challenge came sooner than expected. Scouts from the rival faction had traced their path and ambushed them near a dense asteroid field. The situation was dire. The ship shook violently under the assault, systems failing one by one. John gripped the control panel, heart racing, knowing that any mistake could be fatal. Lyra's eyes glowed silver in the dim light, her form moving with lethal grace. But then a massive explosion rocked the ship, separating them. John found himself thrown to the floor, pain coursing through his body. He could hear her voice in the chaos calling his name. He pushed himself up, ignoring the pain, driven by something stronger than fear, love, trust, and determination. He found Lyra cornered, facing multiple enemies. Without hesitation, John ran to her, taking the brunt of a blast himself. Pain seared through him, but he held firm, shielding her, refusing to let her face the danger alone. Lyra's eyes widened in shock, then softened with understanding. She had seen his courage, his heart, and in that instant, he realized that the reward he had been given was far beyond anything material. When the smoke cleared and the enemies retreated, John sank to his knees, exhausted. Lyra moved to his side, her hand brushing his. "You chose me," she said softly. "Not because you had to, but because you wanted to. And I choose you." John felt tears sting his eyes. In the vast, cold galaxy, amid dangers and uncertainties, he had found something extraordinary. Someone who made him feel alive, needed, and loved. The choice was no longer theirs to question. Together they had survived, grown, and learned that the greatest strength of all was not weapons or skill. It was trust, courage, and heart. And in that quiet, fragile moment, John knew with certainty he would face any danger, endure any fear, and fight against all odds to protect her. Because Lyra was more than a reward. She was his choice, his bond, his future. The galaxy was quiet now, but John and Lyra knew it was only temporary. The threat from the rival faction might return, but for the first time, John did not feel fear alone. He had learned something far more important than survival. Strength meant nothing without trust, courage, and heart. And with Lyra at his side, he felt unstoppable in a way he had never known before. They traveled together in silence, repairing their ship and tending to their injuries. John's arm still ached from the blast, and Lyra's side bore a shallow wound, a reminder that even the strongest could be vulnerable. But they faced these scars together, not as reward and recipient, not as human and alien, but as equals, partners, and friends who had endured the impossible. John looked at her, studying her silver eyes, the way her hair flowed gently in the zero-gravity air, and he realized how much she had changed his life. She was no longer a strange, otherworldly reward handed to him by the guild. She had become a companion, a confidant, and something far deeper, a being who had chosen him, just as he had chosen her. "You know," John said softly, breaking the quiet, "I thought the reward would be simple, something I could hold or use, something small. But you," his voice caught, "you are everything I never knew I needed." Lyra studied him for a moment, a faint smile touching her lips. "I am not an object, John. I am alive, aware, and free. You did not receive me as a prize. You earned me through courage, heart, and trust. That is the true reward." John felt a lump in his throat. He had faced death countless times, yet never had he felt so alive, so connected, and so profoundly responsible for another being. I will never take that for granted," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I promise." Lyra reached out, resting her hand over his. The contact was warm and grounding, yet it carried a power that made him shiver. "Then we face the galaxy together," she said softly. "Whatever comes, we face it side by side, not because we have to, but because we choose to." John nodded, and for the first time he felt a peace that had eluded him all his life. The reward he had sought, something simple, tangible, and safe, was nothing compared to this. This bond, this trust, this connection with Lyra was extraordinary. It was alive, unpredictable, and breathtaking. Days passed, and they journeyed further into uncharted systems. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. John taught Lyra about human life, and she shared secrets of her species, the ancient ways of her kind, and lessons he could never have learned alone. Each moment deepened their bond, proving that the greatest treasures in life were not objects or wealth, but relationships built on understanding and courage. Then one night, as they drifted past a glowing nebula, John realized something profound. The Galactic Guild had given him a reward, yes, But it was not the reward he had expected. It was not something to possess, control, or display. It was something far greater. A living being who could challenge him, inspire him, and teach him what it truly meant to be human. Lyra leaned close, her silver eyes reflecting the nebula's colors. "You thought it would be simple," she whispered. "But life is never simple. And yet in its complexity it is beautiful. As are we together." John smiled, feeling an overwhelming sense of completion. "You're right," he said softly. "I would never trade this. Never for anything." In the endless expanse of the stars, John and Lyra sat side by side, human and alien, explorer and warrior, bonded not by duty but by choice, courage, and trust. The